Being vulnerable is really hard. I've sat down to record this now for about 2 weeks, and I keep stopping and starting because I'm afraid to be vulnerable with you guys. Just like you're probably afraid to be vulnerable with people in your life. And as we sit here in fear, it makes me wonder, what are we truly missing out on by not sharing our experiences? What are we missing out on in our relationships that we're not getting because we're afraid to be vulnerable with those that love us and care about us the most? I'm Mackenzie. I am a marriage and family therapist. I've been in practice since 2011, and I specialize in working with couples. And so today I want to talk to you about why it's important to be vulnerable in our life. And we're going to talk about 3 different reasons why you should consider it. But before we start, let's talk about why we fear it, why we fear being vulnerable. And a lot of that stems from just having emotionally unavailable caregivers, right? Our parents, bless their hearts, did the best they could with what they had, right? And just like us as parents do the best we can with what we have. And so when we were vulnerable with those that were there to take care of us, were our peers, and we were somehow rejected, it then taught us that that's not a safe option, that is not something you want to do because it hurts. And so this fear grows, and we become self-critical, and we isolate, and we become lonely, and that ultimately just leads to us becoming more and more depressed. And that is just not helpful at all in life in general, but it's also especially not helpful if you're not willing to be comfortable with your partner. But the fear of being vulnerable keeps us from doing that. It keeps us from opening up, and instead we hide behind these masks. And the first reason why I think this is because it allows for personal growth. By being vulnerable with others, it gives you the opportunity to face your faults, to acknowledge that they exist, and to say, I'm not perfect and I need help with this. Being able to look within and say, you know what, I'm struggling here. I need help with this. I don't know how to manage this. By being willing to do that, you are now building resiliency, which is causing you to grow as a human, as an individual, which is what we want for our lives. We don't want to be in one place. We want to get better and evolve and do better. The second reason why you want to start to be more vulnerable in your relationships is because it allows for trust to build within the relationship. You have to have mutual trust for both people to be willing to be vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable, you invite the other person to be vulnerable with you, thus creating that sense of trust between the two, because you're both sharing something that is painful inside. Sharing those things makes you closer, right? Going through hard things with your important person, having them be there, support you, and to tell you that you're not alone. That's what builds strong relationships. That requires being vulnerable. And that builds resiliency. And the third reason why it's good to start to be vulnerable with others is because it really does improve your overall mental health. You know, if the fear of being vulnerable and wearing the mask to hide the hurt inside makes us feel isolated and alone, then being vulnerable with others and inviting them to be vulnerable with us about their own struggles, whether they're similar or they're something that they're currently going through, and building that trust with each other, it then helps alleviate some of that emotional weight that we're carrying. The more you open up to others, building trust, the more it improves your mental health and builds resiliency. Forces you to acknowledge the areas that are uncomfortable to acknowledge. It forces you to look at your flaws and to say, I accept them as they are. That's the definition of personal growth. Who doesn't want better mental health, personal growth, closer relationships? I know I do. And maybe if we are vulnerable with each other and we go on this path, this journey to self-acceptance, maybe the world will just start to become a much nicer place, or at least the people in it will be towards each other. Thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you're interested in learning more about vulnerability and the importance in relationships, I highly recommend looking into Brené Brown. She is one of the leading researchers on vulnerability and how shame affects us. And she's a really great speaker. I've left some of her resources as well as others to support what I've said today down in the description box. So feel free to check them out and leave your own experiences with being vulnerable down in the comments. I want to hear, what have you seen benefit you as you've been vulnerable with other people in your life? What's been the positive outcomes of that? And if you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you'd like it. And if you want to stay tuned, more relationship advice is on the way. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for all of our future episodes. And until next time, please take care of each other.